Hi students, welcome to Social Work Practice with Hispanic Families. My name is Kahle and I am your instructor for this course. I'm actually pretty excited to teach this course to you. I've done it several times before and I find it to be a fast-paced but very fun and interesting and interactive course to participate in, and I look forward to learning alongside all of you, hearing about your personal experiences, and seeing how you apply some standard social work practices and techniques, some common family therapy techniques, and some education related to the importance of understanding historical context and cultural elements when working with Hispanic families. I hope that you all have taken a few minutes by now to read through the syllabus so you have an idea of what will be expected throughout this course. I hope you've also taken some time to read my announcements. I did post some information on class policies and facts. Those are some of just the most common issues that I have questions related to coming from students, and a few friendly reminders about requirements related to APA formatting and scholarly work. I also posted an announcement about working with volunteer families, so I just want to address that really quickly up front. You will be required in this class to work with a volunteer Hispanic family, and so I posted some information about what the timeline with that family looks like and then how to sort of identify and decide if that family would qualify. One of the things that I'll note for you is that when you are asked to work with a Hispanic family, the specification really is that you identify a family with more than one family member, but you don't necessarily have to identify a family where all of the family members self-identify as Hispanic or Latino. So as you are preparing for that and sort of trying to seek some volunteers for that, you may want to keep that in mind. There's also a couple of tips in there because, of course, sometimes volunteer families may be a little anxious about having their real names released, so the use of pseudonyms, some information about whether your volunteer family is willing to be shown on camera because there is a videotaped interview required in the last week of the class, and there is a role play required also during this class. So some important tips in there for how to address those issues and concerns, and a friendly reminder that you need to have your consent, your informed consent, and volunteer family identification turned in before you can complete any of the assignments that require the use of that volunteer family. So I believe the first assignment that requires the use is in week 3. So even though it says that that form is due this week, if it takes you a tiny bit longer, that's fine, as long as you have it done in time to turn in your assignment in week 3 that does require use of your volunteer family. I strongly encourage you, however, to start that process right away to identify who that family is and talk through what will be required of them in terms of their time commitment and in terms of, the sort of information and how you can protect their privacy and guarantee confidentiality. Do that sooner rather than later. And if you have issues identifying a family, I typically recommend that you turn to your classmates or maybe some colleagues that you might know and see if anybody has any recommendations. It may not be wise, for example, to use a coworker, depending on what your personal relationship is like and whether you can guarantee their confidentiality and their personal and professional and emotional safety in that situation. But many people have turned to colleagues and used a colleague's family member or a colleague's neighbor, for example, or have turned to classmates and utilized a classmate's family member, or in a few cases even utilized a classmate without identifying that classmate. So your informed consent, of course, coming to me will identify who the individual is that you're working with and who the family is that you're working with, but that information is never shared outside of your consent form being turned into me. So just a few sort of important notes as you prepare for this course. In addition to that, I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself. Since your first week, you are required to tell me and your classmates a little bit about yourself. So you'll notice in your first week, you're asked to do a genogram. I wanted to mention that your genogram should include 3 generations of your family. The generations can include yourself and any siblings, spouse, partner, significant other, whatever that looks like for you, as well as you can go children, grandchildren, and or you can go parents, grandparents. So you want to make sure that you're including 3 generations, as much information as you have access to. Also really important throughout this course, and starting with the genogram assignment, to take a look at the grading rubric. The grading rubric will share important information about how your assignment is graded. And so, for example, for your genogram Part A assignment, you may note that you are required to do 3 generations, and you are also required to include things such as important dates like birth, death, marriage, divorce, any other sort of relevant dates that might need to be included in a genogram that's being prepared when you're working with a family. You are also asked to delineate the type and quality, or I guess, status of the relationship. So, for example, a married couple that's happy may be signified differently than a separated couple that's unhappy. Or, if you have a difficult relationship with one parent, you would want to note that in the line connection between you and your parent, as opposed to a strong relationship with another parent might be noted in a different way. There are some examples, of course, you can look online or in your text and in some of the readings. I also always recommend the GenoPro website, just GENOPRO.com. You can purchase a genogram software through there, which is not at all necessary for this. You can create this using, Publisher or other Microsoft programs, Apple programs. Just make sure you convert them so that I can open them. And then you can also, of course, do it by hand as long as it's neat and I'm able to read it and it looks, professional and well assembled. So, but the GenoPro website does show some really great examples of how to draw a genogram or make a genogram using a computer, and how to delineate things like mental illness, substance abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, challenged relationships, strong relationships, happy relationships, divorce, marriage. So all those sorts of things are kind of outlined on that website. You don't have to use it and follow it, but I do always recommend it to students who maybe aren't familiar with genograms and haven't done it before, because it's a really great tool, free resource online to get some of those ideas from without having to buy the software. So the other thing you're asked to do is an introduction video. And your introduction video is asked to talk a little bit about your personal culture and your family culture. And I love the introduction videos. It's probably one of my favorite assignments of this entire class, because it's a really great opportunity for you to sort of self-reflect and also to share a little bit about yourself that I certainly don't know, and probably the majority, if not all of your classmates, don't know. So please be thoughtful, read the prompts under that assignment, and make sure you're answering the questions. And in light of that, I will share a little bit about myself as well. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, my name is Katie, and I am a social worker. I am an MSW. I'm actually a native of Arizona. I grew up in Tempe, which is where Arizona State University is, go Devils, and actually grew up with 2 parents who met at ASU, and so they married and had 4 kids, and I'm the youngest. And I grew up in Arizona, in Tempe my entire life, and moved to Chandler, Arizona, which is a neighboring suburb of Tempe, about 12 years ago when I was pregnant with my first child. And I have lived here ever since, and I love my community. Since graduating from social work school with my MSW, I have done a variety of different sorts of jobs. I started out doing some pretty strictly advocacy work and community building work with a statewide coalition to end homelessness, and was there about a year, did event planning, did state advocacy, community advocacy, local advocacy, some national stuff related to homelessness, not in my backyard kind of measures, those sorts of issues, fair housing, affordable housing. And then I moved from there to work for our statewide Community Action Association. And at that job I did a lot of statewide and local and national advocacy again, but mostly related to hunger and anti-hunger work. I did a lot of stuff around SNAP, which is formerly the food stamp program. I did a lot of stuff around anti-hunger work, around access to food, around food deserts, and just in general around work for families experiencing poverty and trying to advocate for policies and programs that assisted those families and provided them support. I was there for about 6 years. And then 6 years ago, actually yesterday, 6 years ago, I moved to working for my local schools and actually run a family resource center. And our family resource center is geared at providing comprehensive support to families in need. That support ranges from providing classes and programs for families with kids 0 through 5 to prepare their children for school, providing literacy and language support and STEM programs and programs focused on positive parenting and, opportunities for parents to learn about growth and development of their child and kind of what's typical and, when to be concerned and how to find resources when you're concerned and how to find community supports. All of those pieces. We have a food bank. We have behavioral health services. We work with WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children. And then we have a couple of other programs, including a medical program and a dental program that provides free medical and dental care for our local children who are uninsured. And it's something that I'm really proud of. The community that I work in is the city on a whole is pretty socioeconomically successful. We have a lot of families with quite a bit of wealth. We have a lot of families that parents work in the tech field. Tech is really big in our community relatively for Arizona. We have Intel and we have Orbital ATK and we have a couple of other companies, PayPal and Amazon and several others out in our area out here. But in addition to that, there are absolutely pockets of our community that are low income. And we're finding disproportionately in those communities, we are working with families who are Hispanic and Latino. And so Arizona's got a storied history, unfortunately, of some policies that have been difficult and challenging and sometimes harmful to those families. And there's a high need for supports and resources. And so a big part of my job, about 85% of the families that we work with on any given day are identify as Hispanic and Latino. And quite often we're talking about, multi-generational households where grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle or mom and dad are mostly fluent in Spanish, perhaps not, perhaps they speak some English but are not comfortable with it. We're talking about families where people are afraid to reach out for resources because they don't know what's going to happen to their family if they do. Where kids are growing up with parents who maybe didn't complete anything beyond a high school education or did, but did it in another country, and it's a completely different universe here, and our expectations are completely different. And so oftentimes we're working with families that feel very disenfranchised and very separate from the larger community around them. And so it's given me a really unique perspective on what it's like to work with families who are Hispanic and Latino, on some of the unique barriers when you don't identify as Hispanic or Latino. I do not. My family background does not contain Hispanic and Latino heritage. And so I'm one of the very few in my office who can say that. And so what does that look like for me when I'm a social worker trying to provide programs and services and advocate and work with that community? It's been a very interesting experience for me. And so hopefully I can share some of that as we move along throughout this course. Just talk really about what that experience is like and how we can better advocate for those families and connect with them and communicate and understand, the cultural elements that can often be at play. So with that said, I don't want to make my first video too long, so I just wanted to give a welcome and remind you to please take a look under Getting Started for links to my videos, to the syllabus, to some important information and announcements. I will post under there regularly, and if you ever have questions, please reach out to me through Engage on the email first. If you have something urgent, my cell phone number is in one of those announcements for you, so you can text me if needed. And I'm looking forward to a great session with all of you and looking forward to seeing your introduction videos. Thank you.